Hello. What is sudden wealth syndrome? It sounds like a terrible disease. Why is it something that we should all be thinking about now, even if you have not become suddenly wealthy? Because when you have a plan for something, you are going to be more likely to successfully kind of manage a change in a situation. So that's what we're going to break down today. What is sudden wealth syndrome and how can you prepare for it? Hey, welcome to the show. Molly here. We're going to talk about sudden wealth syndrome today and some things to think about as you prepare for this potentially to happen. So, first, I would like to caveat that I'm in no way qualified in any way to make this video because I have never become suddenly wealthy, nor have I ever dealt with sudden wealth syndrome. To date, most of the people who have kind of experienced this type of thing are like lottery winners and that type of person who unexpectedly is kind of given a large sum of money that they are not emotionally or mentally prepared to accept. However, we have a couple things on the horizon that indicate that we should probably be thinking about this because there are a couple of scenarios playing out that could mean that many of us have sudden wealth that we need to manage and prepare for. Now, while I've not dealt with sudden wealth, meaning I'm not qualified in that capacity, I have, however, spent my entire adult life trying to figure out why people do the things that they do. This goes back many, many decades. And this really ties into how people handle things, how they react to things, the importance of understanding your beliefs and how those beliefs can dictate the decisions that you make. So that's what we're going to talk about today. It probably would affect other things in your life other than sudden wealth syndrome, but this is definitely a scenario where having a plan and not needing it is far better than needing it and not having that plan. All right. So the first thing that is key to understand when, let's just say hypothetically, we woke up tomorrow and there was like some kind of XRP flipped the switch. And now all of a sudden our XRP is worth lots of money, many five-figure number, high five-figure number, even six-figure number. I'm not saying that's going to happen. There are other scenarios, to be perfectly honest, around this sudden wealth idea that have nothing to do with XRP, but there are a couple that do include XRP. So let's just hypothetically say for this video that this happens. We wake up one day, like 3 weeks or something, and we're told the world is very different. You now have all of this money. So the first thing to understand is that your identity, who you are, has not changed. And you don't want to lose sight of that. You often see people who go through, like celebrities deal with this, where they're sort of just a regular person. And then one day they wake up and like everyone knows who they are and they're sort of treated very differently. It creates a conflict in their identity because they see themselves one way and everybody else sees them another way. It is a problem. That's why you see many celebrities often go through self-destructive behavior because they have not prepared their identity to handle this new situation. That could happen with money because if you grow up, especially if you had kind of negative beliefs around money or limiting beliefs around money, or this feeling that like only certain people were allowed to have lots of money and you are not one of those people, you're going to wake up and be like, wait a minute, this is not in alignment with who I am. This is not part of my identity. So expect that and understand that you are still going to be the same person internally, but you're going to have to shift the way that you see yourself so that you can become someone who manages millions and potentially billions of dollars, and someone who can do that successfully and someone who can do that without it being this like arduous, upsetting process. All right. The second thing that can happen is making it a bigger deal than it is. And this relates to this idea of importance. I talked about this in another video. Uh, Much of the root cause of stress in my life ties down to making things a bigger deal than they really are. And that can be labeled as important. So if you can minimize the importance of some things, you can still deal with things that are not labeled as important. Like, I might go home and wash the dishes, or I might have to go run an errand and I'm still doing it. I'm taking care of it. But have I made it this big deal that I'm doing some kind of task? No. So we are all capable of being very productive and effective getting things done without making them a big like emotional drama deal. So that's going to happen probably with the money thing. So there's going to be all this money and it can be this like thing you obsess over and talk about and think about and consumes you all the time. Or it can just be another part of your life that you manage and take care of, like you do maybe your kids or your job or your bills that you pay, like all the things that you consider sort of responsibilities that you manage effectively without overthinking them. This can be one of those things. And it's going to be a conscious choice, a conscious decision to say, you know what, I'm just going to handle this money maturely and responsibly, and it's not going to be a big deal. And there's going to be things that I don't know how to do, but I'm going to just figure it out or find people to help me and not turn it into this like stressful, like chaotic thing. Because that's going to kind of tie into the next thing that I think is probably going to be a bigger deal, which is going to be a fear. So, and not everyone is going to deal with this situation the same way. So if some of these things don't resonate with you, great. If some of them do, then just these are things to think about. There's probably going to be some fear around losing the money or around the money being taken away. And that can create a lot of panic and like clinginess and desperation and neediness if you are trapped in this fear cycle of like, I got this money, it kind of came out of nowhere, easy come, easy go. I could just as easily lose it. And that also can create conditions where you do lose the money because you are not acting responsibly or in a level headed manner because you're consumed by this sort of pendulum of drama that is creating paranoia and anxiety that this money could be gone one day. So, how can you manage that? The first thing in all these types of situations is just to notice it within yourself and say, wait, you know what? Hold on. I'm acting like a crazy person. I'm really worried about this thing that probably won't happen. It could. So, what can I do to mitigate that risk? And kind of look at this in a rational way and just acknowledge to yourself that, like, you know what? I'm getting caught up in this anxiety about losing this money because I've never had this kind of situation before. How am I going to handle it? Let's make sure that I don't um, make emotional or rash decisions. And I think fear is a powerful dictator of how we react to things. And you don't ever really want to make important decisions about something like this from a place of fear. So let it kind of go through you, acknowledge, like, hey, I'm kind of scared about this thing. It's probably not real. Let it pass and then make your responsible decision. This is why, honestly, like having this plan in advance before any of these emotions come along is a great idea, because then you don't have to worry about making those decisions or that plan in the moment. You kind of have it all worked out in advance. All right, the next thing that can happen is this idea of overcompensating. You see this a lot sometimes with newly wealthy people who aren't really adjusted to that identity yet, and they sort of feel like they have to overcompensate. They might like be a little bit ostentatious or sort of mention the money all the time, or make a lot of drops in conversation that kind of allude to the fact that they're still not comfortable in this new identity. And that might happen with you. You might find that, you know, you're not sure how to deal with it, so you act differently, you dress differently, you behave differently, and not in necessarily ways that are you being a better version of you, that it's more overcompensating. So just notice that again in yourself, that if you uh, are having a difficult time in this adjustment because you're like, the person that I used to be, where life as I knew it was pretty simple and straightforward, now all of a sudden I have this new money that's come in and I don't really know how to be in that. Just be aware there can be a tendency to overcompensate, and um, that's not really necessarily something you might want to do. So think about it in advance. Like, if I got all this money, what would be the good things that I could do with it, and how could it help me be a better version of me? And then just be aware of maybe some natural tendencies to, you know, blow it on stupid stuff or kind of be obnoxious to other people that maybe don't have that money. Like, think about what is the type of person that you want to be after this happens, so that you can kind of already have that lined up in your mind. All right, the next thing I think affects women more than guys, but maybe not. I might be wrong on this. And this is going to be around the giving yourself permission to actually have this money. Uh, there are often times in life where people want to give us things, and it's uncomfortable to receive gifts, or in this case, like this newfound wealth, without feeling like you've earned it or had to go through some kind of struggle or arduous process to get it. And the thing about sort of lessons of the universe is you often are only going to be given the things that you're willing to receive. And so if you're not open to kind of getting a new life via this money, and you sort of see this as like a scary, stressful thing, you're not really giving yourself permission to kind of live this next season. And be aware of that. I see this a lot. I definitely have a lot of this in me that I often don't. If something's too easy, like I feel like there's a catch. Like, wait a minute, there's no way I could just get that without having to go through some kind of struggle or suffering for it. And so notice that in yourself when this sort of money comes. If you feel like you're discounting that maybe you should give it all away, or that you should, you didn't earn it, or like all these excuses to rationalize maybe why this isn't a great idea for you to even have it, just know that this, you're not giving yourself permission to receive. And this affects probably many other areas of your life than just getting money, but this is one way that you can in advance just tell yourself, you know what, whatever comes my way, like I'm going to receive it and be excited about it and do cool things with it and help people, and, be a better version of myself and be as generous as I want, but not being generous simply because I don't think I'm worthy of it. You have to be generous. You should be generous because you want to kind of contribute positively and help more people. And it's not tied to some kind of guilt or feeling that you don't deserve it. Okay. And then the last part is going to be the harder part. And this, I think we're all going to have to go through some learning processes. How do you actually take care of this money? What do you do with it? Do you put it in some kind of like a trust account? Do you kind of manage it in a investment fund? How can you find people who you can trust to help you do that? And I do not have all the answers to those questions. This is just something I think we each individually need to start thinking about and planning for, so that, again, when it happens, you're not in this shock panic of like, I have no idea what to do, and you end up making rash, unwise decisions because you haven't thought about it in advance. I don't know anyone. Actually, I do know one guy whose mother won the lottery, but I don't really know anyone kind of growing up who went through that. But I've seen cases where people often just go out and they buy a bunch of like very expensive consumer goods, houses, cars, and all these things, like multiple cars, multiple houses. And, you might make the decision to do that, but just know that that might not be the most responsible choice for you to make. And one thing that I plan to do, this is sort of an identity shift, is if you kind of decide who is this identity of this person who has all this money that they manage responsibly, and you kind of ask yourself when the money comes, like, all right, how does this person who's had this money for like 50 years and it's no longer a big deal, how do they make decisions about what's a good use for that money? And make decisions when it's first starting as someone who has more experience. And that can sometimes help you avoid making decisions that you ultimately regret because you sort of had this impulse buy because you were wrapped up in this like emotional drama of the money. All right. So sudden wealth syndrome may be coming to affect all of us. I'm not a psychic or time traveler yet. That is on my list of things to be a time traveler. That'd be super cool. And the idea here is that we're going to prepare for this in the event that it does happen so that there is no shock, because your identity is going to have to prepare. You're going to have some parameters in place for how you want to be as this person after this. So you're not making decisions that are from overcompensating or from guilt or from any kind of feeling of unworthiness from it, which could affect your ability to manage it responsibly. And then just know you're probably going to have to learn from some people how to take care of it. What do you do with it? What kind of, do you put it in investments? Do you, again, I don't have the answers to those questions. Just know that is something you should start talking about and thinking about. And it's actually easier, I think, to do that now when it doesn't feel real. So there isn't any like panic or worry or concern about it. But you're now in a position, if you start thinking about it now, you will be in a position when it happens to know, I've already had a lot of conversations about this. I'm on my way to figuring it out, even if you don't necessarily have all of it figured out. So, all right. If you like this video, please hit like, subscribe to the channel, and I will see you in the next video.